Hello and welcome. We will get started in just a few minutes. We're having a few technical glitches, so bear with us. For those of you that are here, type into the chat where you're joining us from.
Hi, it's wonderful to be with so many wonderful.
What a mature voice. Such a little face. She's 35.
Really great crowd. We love
Here's
it.
the other
We love
one.
to see
There's
so many
another
people
organization with.
So for those of you who have joined us, type in the chat where you're joining us from. I am joining the book club. My name is Alicia King. I'm joining the book club from Juneau, Alaska. So would love to know where you all are from. And then we're just waiting. As I said, we had some technical glitches. This seems to be my day of computer glitches. I literally have been on Zoom since 5 a.m. Alaska time. Just got off of another Zoom call to get onto this one. And Zoom is probably tired of me by now. Diana, it's nice to see you again. Thanks for joining us. Barbara, Judy, Drina, Juanita, Jim, Carol, welcome. And Barbara, wishing you were in Juneau. It's dark. Not as dark as the screen behind me, but it is dark.
So how come it's not showing? Make sure you're muted.
Welcome, Vicky. Welcome, Cindy. So glad you all could join us. Bear with us just a moment. We've just got a couple technical glitches. We had our guest, Geoffrey. We were doing some sound checks and slide checks, and then he disappeared. So
He's awake and he will join us again fully in a minute.
So again, my name's Alicia, joining this wonderful book club from Juneau, Alaska. Let us know in the chat where you're calling from. So a couple folks from Colorado and somebody from Ohio.
I know Geoffrey was curious to know if someone was joining from the UK.
It's a great question. Anybody from the UK joining us this evening, which is where Geoffrey is from?
1 a.m. so I won't blame them if I'm not all here.
Yeah, he did say he had to set his alarm so that he could wake up to join us. Warm, sunny South California. That sounds so nice. Says the girl from Alaska with like 4 feet of snow on the ground.
Wisconsin, the issue could be headed to court. For nearly a year, the bipartisan state election.
If you don't mind muting yourself when you're not talking. Thank you.
What do you think, Daisy?
Maybe you should start the introduction, and I'm trying to reach out to Geoffrey. I think his computer stopped and he had to restarting, so hopefully we'll be back in 5 minutes.
Okay, all right. You know what? Because of all the technical difficulties we're having and
Oh yeah,
Jeffrey,
sharing my screen.
let's we'll skip the slideshow.
Okay.
And I'll just breeze through the introduction that I normally do. So again, welcome everyone. My name is Alicia King. I am a volunteer with Environment for the Americas, and I live in Juneau, Alaska. And I am thrilled to be able to do these book clubs. It's just so fun to get people together and talk about some of the books that are focused on birds and learn more about people. So I want to share with you that Environment for the Americas, a nonprofit organization. Let me see a show of hands. You can show your hand either by raising it physically or in the reaction button at the bottom of your screen. How many folks are really familiar with Environment for the Americas? A little bit. Not very. Okay. All right. Thanks for that. That helps me to know how much I should talk. And so Environment for the Americas is a nonprofit organization based in Boulder, Colorado, but works throughout the Americas and now throughout the world, working on World Migratory Bird Day. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the other programs that Environment for the America works with. So World Migratory Bird Day is the largest, it is the largest migratory bird festival. It celebrates the phenomenon of bird migration and serves as an action call to help us think about birds and the conservation of birds. It's World Migratory Bird Day is coordinated by Environment for the Americas, the Convention on Migratory Species, and Agreement for the Conservation of African Eurasian Migratory Water Birds. So a lot of people put a lot of time and energy into World Migratory Bird Day. And again, World Migratory Bird Day is managed by Environment for the Americas. And so some of the things about Environment for the Americas, it is important to think about the way that we unify our voices for bird conservation. And Environment for the Americas hopes in directing World Migratory Bird Day that they really connect people to other cultures, to diversity, to bird conservation, and to watching birds, to enjoying birds. In 2022, World Migratory Bird Day is going to raise awareness about the importance of dark skies for migratory birds. So with the light pollution and the amount of other stressors that birds have to deal with when they migrate, we want to look at and address the skies, the night skies, and the impact that light has on the migration of birds. A migratory Environment for the Americas does a lot of work with other organizations and does a lot of fundraising and creating awareness through the educational materials that they sell. And as in addition to educational materials, will allow you to purchase things that are just fun and maybe get the conversation going about bird conservation and bird habitat, anywhere from socks to coffee to books, like the books that you ordered and bought from Environment for the Americas for our discussion tonight. We like to find materials and books and education materials and gifts and things that really heighten the awareness of birds and their conservation. So selling birdsong coffee is important because shade-grown coffee is important for conserving bird habitat. And Daisy organizes the shop at EFTA, at Environment for the Americas. And whenever I wear the socks or the scarves that have birds on them and go to a party or someplace or on Zoom where people can see my scarves, it allows me the opportunity to talk to people about bird conservation. So I enjoy that a lot, being able to do that. I want to share with you that Environment for the Americas does a lot of work behind the scenes with youth, with being able to engage youth in conservation projects, working for other organizations, being able to get out into the field and really reach different cultures, reach a diverse group of youth to be able to get them engaged in conservation and projects that help, whether it's tagging birds. Geoffrey would call it ringing birds. If you all remember reading in his book, he talked about ringing birds. And so the bird banding or the ringing of birds helps us learn more about them. And so Environment for the Americas participates in research and local surveys, global data. They attend conferences. They create and share educational materials and do things that that really help encourage people to understand more about birds and their habitat and the need for the conservation of birds and their habitats. So we have a number of ways that you can engage with us with Environment for the Americas. Follow us on Facebook. Who's out there as a follower of Facebook? How many of you follow our Facebook page? Show of hands, either through reactions or raise your hand. You can tell how old school I am because I still raise my hand. So maybe we should put in, maybe we should put in the chat the link for the Facebook page. We also have an Instagram account and a Twitter account. So follow us on those, keep up to date with what we're doing, and become a member of Environment for the Americas. You can become a member at a variety of levels and multiple ways that you can support the organization. And we do want you to stay in touch with us, and we will put those links in the chat. And I see somebody put in that they love the emails. Thank you for mentioning that. You can sign up for the newsletter that goes out that keeps you all up to date with everything, allows you an opportunity to share your voice as we're thinking about what birds are we going to talk about? What is our theme going to be? What are the things that we really want to focus on? How do we want to reach out to people? So lots of opportunities to be able to engage with us and support us. And especially when the young interns write their blogs or share information about what they're doing, it's really nice to be able to get some feedback for them and how cool people think they are. So we love these book clubs. We love that some of you are repeat bookie people that come to join us. Thank you for continuing to read the books, purchase the books, and come to these book clubs. Our next one is February the 24th, and it is Parrots of the World. And so it looks like Geoffrey has gotten through his technical difficulties. Am I right about that?
Yes.
And so, oh, thank goodness, you don't have to listen to me talk anymore. Thank you for your patience, everybody. Thank you again for joining us this evening, letting us know where you're calling from or where you're joining us from. And welcome, Geoffrey.
Geoffrey needs just 3 minutes for his sound to come up. Hi, Geoffrey, can you hear us?
Welcome, Geoffrey.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I had to reboot my whole system.
That's why.
Well, Geoffrey, we understand. Thank you so much for taking that extra time and for waking up so early. Or what time is it in UK?
It's now 1:15 in the morning.
Oh. So we're a live dream for you, Geoffrey.
Beg your pardon?
We're a live dream for you.
Oh, thank you very much. What a wonderful dream.
So thank you, Geoffrey, for joining the Environment for the Americas Book Club. We really appreciate your taking the time and energy to be with us here tonight, this morning, this early morning. And I want to start things off with a bio of you. However, I feel like a biography that I could read about you probably wouldn't do you justice. And I'm kind of feeling like I would love for you to tell all of the readers in this book club about you. Do you mind? Can you give us a little bio?
No, not at all. Okay, do you want me to start now? Yeah.
Absolutely. And then I've already given the spiel about Environment for the Americas, invited people to join the Environment for Americas, and all of that. So we've done all of that. Yep. And now we are so ready to have a conversation with you. So if you give us a bio, and then if you want to, either share the slides with us or whatever you're thinking, and then we'll pepper you with some questions.
Okay, no worries. Okay, so hello everyone. Nice to see you all here. I've lost my screen again. Sorry, just bear with me. Where have you gone? Oh, there you are. Right. So my name is Geoffrey McMullan. I was born in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Served in the British Army for 22 years in the Royal Artillery. So that's like big guns. I've traveled extensively around the world. I think to date I've done something like 73 countries, both with the military and outside of the military. I've been fortunate enough to get to some places that we only get to see David Attenborough go to, like South Georgia, down in the Falklands. I got locked out in China once when I was in Hong Kong. Could have caused a diplomatic incident, but there you go. Got away with that one. And I've been a bird watcher since, well, let me see, I was sent to boarding school, an all boys school when I was 12, and that's when I first came into contact with birds. And I was in and out of bird watching as a young boy, and then eventually when I joined the army, I ended up in Germany where I served for 20 years and became an avid birder. Got involved in ringing or banding programs, set up a nature reserve in Germany, which I consider the jewel of my crown. That's my I like to consider that's my Andy Warhol moment, my 15 minutes, if you like. So yeah, I thought I was going to buy a house there and settle down with this nature reserve in my backyard, and it didn't happen that way. So I came back to England, and I've been involved in lots of different programs around the world, working with young people, working with addictions in rehab, became a counsellor. Then I became a nature-based counsellor, so I only work with people in nature as opposed to the traditional room. And I get some amazing results, and people have some amazing experiences by reconnecting with nature. And throughout all of that, everything I do, plan wherever I go, be it business, military, whatever, there's always bird watching involved. Even prior to the Gulf War, I told all the guys that by the end of the war, there will all be bird watchers. And I won't tell you what they said, but I'll let your imagination run riot. And sure enough, they were all birding. Well, not all of them, but quite a few of them.
Hey, Geoffrey.
Yeah.
I am so sorry to interrupt you. I've had a couple of people say they're having a little bit of a hard time hearing you.
Hearing me? Okay.
I don't know if there's a volume you might be able to. How are folks?
How about that? Is that better?
Yeah, I'm getting some thumbs up.
Okay,
great.
cool.
Thank you, Geoffrey.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Technology, me and technology. When I was at school, if you had a calculator, you were somebody. But now it's all this fancy stuff. Yeah, so Yeah, so I worked with Rally International in Belize for 6 months, working with young people, both international and local. What else? What else? Loads of stuff, really. Yeah. What else would you like to know? I mean, book writing is a bit of a late thing for me. Just to let you know, I struggled at school. One of my favorite things that I like to tell people is that in school, I got no qualifications at all. I literally fell through the system, hence boarding school, because my boarding school was approved by everybody but me. So officially, I didn't learn to read until I was 12. And here I am now writing books. So I'm enjoying it. I'm absolutely enjoying it. It's a great journey. So I've got about 15 books lined up that I would like to write. So when I work with young kids, I've worked with young offenders, disaffected youth. I don't actually have a problem talking about these things with them because I think it's really important to be open and honest with them because it gives them permission to be who they are, regardless of what the system says about them, you know? So bit of a knight in shining armor, I suppose, in some respects. Yeah. I hope I've got plenty more years left in me as well.
We do too. Well, thank you so much for sharing so much about you, and we'll get to know more as we learn more about the writing of your book. And you've got another book that you've written, I believe, that you're going to let us know how we can get that book. Yeah. And we have questions from folks that that they'll want to ask. And so you want to dive into questions, Geoffrey, or do you? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm very happy to take questions. I work better on the hoof than with the script.
Okay. Well, I've already got one question in the chat. So all of you can put your question in the chat if you'd like to, or raise your hand, and I'm happy to unmute you and have you ask your question. But I'm going to give you Janice Culver. Thanks for putting this question in there, Janice. Was there an experience you had or memory you have about when you realized your love for birds?
Yeah, most definitely. In fact, when I was writing the book, I got asked a question by a dear friend. And the question was, why do I get so excited when I see a woodpecker? Woodpeckers are my favorite birds. And more excited than when I see another species of bird that I've never seen before. And that literally goes back to my boarding school days, where it wasn't a very happy environment. It was very, well, it wasn't a happy environment, shall we say. And I was having breakfast one morning, which I basically start the book off with in chapter 1, where I saw a green woodpecker on the lawn. And it just transported me to a different place. I was no longer in this place that I didn't want to be in, had no desire to be here, or be there rather. And it took me, when did I write the book? 2020. So it took me until then to figure out that's when I fell in love with birds. That's the first time I became aware that there were birds. I probably saw them flying around, but I didn't register that they were there. But this green woodpecker was there. And then I suddenly realized that my excitement throughout the years of seeing woodpeckers basically sprang from that moment. And then the second time I encountered a woodpecker, which is my favorite, which is a black woodpecker. I don't know if you can see him up here. There's a black woodpecker back here, which somebody made for me in England. And that bird, I was out walking with my daughter one day, and I heard this bird calling. I didn't recognize the call, and it flew right over my head. And I suppose you could say it was almost like you were being touched by creation itself. It was just so electrifying. It was exciting. Of course, I don't tell my army buddies because I wouldn't have heard the end of it. You know, I would have been called all sorts at that point in time. I had to wait a few more years before I established myself as a soldier, where I could talk about these things and people will either walk away or listen. You know, but yeah. So the first time was in England in a boarding school in a very unsafe environment. Yeah. I
Yes,
tend to
so
give
some-
long answers.
No, that's great. We love your sharing. We sometimes call those birds spark birds. So they spark something in you and
Okay.
get you engaged. But it sounds, when I was reading that passage, I must admit, Geoffrey, as I was reading some of this, there were a few times you brought me really close to tears. And
Really? Oh,
yes,
wow.
and that the boarding school, you know, when I was looking at this, I was thinking that it was almost like you were saved by birds. And of course, every bird lover, you know, loves when people are saved by birds. And
Yeah.
so it's, you know, being safe and, you know, just in the work that you're doing and engaging with youth and engaging in therapy and nature, it's good to feel safe. And when
Yeah.
you can find something, you know, that evokes that feeling and that, you know, that need of feeling safe, it's, it really makes a huge difference. And so I just, yeah, that pretty much brought me to tears when I was reading about your boarding
Wow.
school and your engagement with the woodpecker. I have so many questions for you, but darn it, I got other people who are also asking questions. So
Can I just share something with you very quickly? Recently, I got sent a book from Japan by somebody who had read the book, and it's traditional Japanese poems, both in Japanese and English. And you know, you were talking about tears. The chap was sharing with me that somehow my book got him to face his childhood issues around his family, and he sent the book as a thank you. And I started crying when I got that. I was like, I didn't write that for that reason, but I just, yeah, it's amazing that birds can touch you on so many different levels, and you really don't know what other people get from what you're doing. And it, you know, that was a wonderful moment for me.
yeah,
Sorry to
absolutely.
jump in.
And I was just saying that I have tons of questions for you, but darn it, other people have put questions into the chat. And so,
Okay, yeah, far away.
let's see. Diana asks, when you travel to a new area to do birding,
Mhm.
what do you use to research the birds you might see there? And do you take birding ID books with you?
Okay, so I have several criteria, and in the book I also have like my travel tips. I have three things. The first thing I want to do is see woodpeckers in that area. So I usually target the rarer ones because the common ones will be there anyway. Then I go for endemic birds, purely and simply because you're not going to get them in any other country. And then any bird that comes along. And one of my things that I say to myself, if I like a country, I'll stay. If I don't, I'll move on to the next one. I have my get out of jail free card, which is my credit card and my passport. And if a train breaks down, I'll sit down in the pub, order a beer, get my field guide out, and just imagine all the birds I'm going to see. So I literally transport myself, you know, like if I was coming to America, there's a particular bird, well, there's several birds I want to see, but one in particular, I visualize myself seeing it.
Thank you for that, Geoffrey. All right, the next question from RT Oaks is, upon introducing your fellow soldiers to birding, did you observe a passionate sense of discovery within them? Was it healing for them? Might it still be a hobby for them?
Okay, way back when I was 18, I was accused of being gay because I was a bird watcher. we had a discussion and he never accused me again. But over the years, as people got to know me and they could feel my passion, and I think for them it was more, yeah, I mean, a lot of the guys came and helped me set up the nature reserve one day, and for them it was, let's get out of camp for the day and just have fun on the gravel pit. But then I would see in quite a few of them that they actually loved my passion. Like one of my men, who's now a good friend, he now lives in Georgia, and he was telling me that he got joy out of seeing my passion. And then he started to look at birds, and other people were looking at birds. Whether they actually became bird watchers, I'm not really sure, but they certainly derived a certain amount of pleasure from it, you know, particularly when they were trying to make fun of me. But I was quite able to take that as well. So, and I would give it back to them, and they didn't like that. But I know in later years, some of them are a lot of them are friends now, and they talk about birding. I mean, one of my bosses who's now moved to Spain is writing to me all the time. I've seen this bird in my garden. What is it? And he'll describe it. So the fact that he's looking at the bird and wanting to find out what it is speaks volumes, I think. Maybe he's matured in his older age.
Well, and it is amazing how many times you can introduce birding to somebody and they might not get it right then, or it might not interest them, but later on, and my guess is that you've got a lot of buddies out there that remember when you saved a bird, or I remember the story in the book when you, and you're going to have to correct me if I'm wrong about the situation, but you were someplace, I believe in Germany, and there was some hunting going on, and it was the way that they were doing the hunting, and you had your men like shoot and make a whole bunch of noise, and then that kind of spoiled the hunting. You sound pretty fearless, Geoffrey.
I sound what?
Pretty fearless.
Furious.
Fear. You have no fear.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. No, there are certain things. I mean, in the 22 years that I served, I refused 2 orders that I believed were illegal. The problem with refusing an order from the person who's given it to you is he might not want to promote you because you just said no to him. But that particular situation was fantastic. We were actually sent out to, it was a leadership course, and they were all out on a map reading exercise. And we were sent out to ambush them. So me and my guys, we locked up. I'd already recce'd the area, so I knew where I wanted to set up the ambush. And we were there like 2-3 o'clock in the morning, I think. And these guys were supposed to come through about 6 in the morning, and they were late. And I discovered later that they actually got lost, which is, you know, we all do when we start map reading. But we were looking down into a valley to a field from a wooded area, and all these Germans turned up and started setting themselves up for a shooting pheasants, rabbits, whatever. We were cold, we were wet, and I thought, okay, these guys are not going to come, that something's happened, so we might as well make good use of the ammunition. So I ordered my guys to open fire. It was blank ammunition, not live ammunition, I might add. And of course, they just enjoyed it. They let loose with everything, thunder flashes, guns firing right, left and center. We're setting off trip flares so that the whole area would just light up with these trip flares. Pigeons flew off, pheasants flew off, foxes disappeared, rabbits headed for their burrows. And the Germans were just sat there shaking their fists at us and shouting at us. And we were like, yeah, nice one, Fritz. And we walked off. So the boys absolutely loved that bit. That was a day they enjoyed birding, I guess, because they upset the Germans. So yeah, the good old days.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So I want to go back to something that you said a little bit earlier, and while I wait for anybody to populate some more questions, I get to ask some. So I loved that you started your book with tips. And so you had your tips at the beginning of the book to, you know, kind of set the stage for these journeys. And you have in here, it's tip number 5, is I always heed local advice, even if it means dipping out on lots of cracking birds.
Yeah.
And I can tell you don't live in the United States. And so dipping out, leaving or not partaking, is that dipping?
No, dipping out means so you go and see, you want to see whatever bird and you don't get to see it, so you've dipped out. You're not going to see it.
Okay.
So,
And then you dip out, so not seeing lots of cracking birds.
yeah, cracking
So
means,
do tell, what's your definition of cracking? I know what my definition would be if I were to explain, but what's cracking birds?
okay, so in Northern Ireland, if we're having a really good time, if I say, oh, we went to this party the other night and it was a great crack, means you had a good time. So dipping out and cracking birds means you've dipped out on loads of amazing birds.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification.
I'm glad you asked that. I will clarify that in my follow-up book, which is called The Wennies.
I did love that you had in there baggage handles. Have an extra baggage handle or put a piece of paper in your suitcase. I just recently lost one during I don't know if you heard about the big winter storm that happened that caught a lot of us in Seattle. Well, I live in Alaska, but I was flying through Seattle, and
great place,
a lot of us got stranded. And my bag got lost, and my luggage thing got left, and I'm like, oh, how do I describe somebody what my bag looks like? And I'm just looking for more questions.
What I would do there is I would photocopy my passport or my driving license with my name and address on it. Since then, I've changed my mind. I'm not going to do that because with so many scams going on and fraud, it's probably not a good idea to put a picture of your passport in there. So I just write it on a piece of paper, all my details, and I put I put it into I seal it in plastic, laminate it. That's the word I was looking for. I laminate it and I put one in every single bag. So if I do lose my bags, anyone rooting around will find my contact details, because the tags on the outside of your bag can get lost. So
very easily, as I discovered this last trip I took. So you started a woodpecker study group. Am I remembering that?
I was with it in the beginning. I didn't actually start it. It was a German professor, but I was quite heavily involved with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So a group of you just got together and talked about woodpeckers. You had said woodpeckers were kind of like your.
Yeah. Everybody at that particular point was into woodpeckers in the group, and we would have guest speakers, and then we'd go. We'd go to different places, but the first one was in a place called Forsvik, Finland, where we had 7 of the 10 European woodpeckers, of which there are now 11, because the Iberian green woodpecker has been split from the green woodpecker. So I had to go to Spain to complete my European list of woodpeckers a few years back. So
I'm going to ask you a question about that, but we've got another question in the chat. Where have you not birded that you would like to visit next? Assuming there are no travel restrictions or anything. So where would you like to visit next?
Colombia. I'm going back to the Falklands at the end of this year on a boat trip, but Colombia I've not birded. And I plan next year to go to China, this time officially rather than unofficially, and nearly cause a diplomatic incident, like I said. I want to go to central China. There's a tour out there that covers 7 major habitats, including the Gobi Desert. So I'm itching to get out there.
So I don't know if Allison asked that question, and I don't know if she's like me, but I'm kind of a little starved for a birding trip.
Yeah.
I've only traveled to family things out of necessity these last
Right.
couple years.
Okay.
But yeah, Colombia, I've been there once, would love to go back again.
Well, an interesting thing about Colombia, as I was researching it last year, I came across a guy called Miles McMullan, the same surname as me. And when I looked at his details, he's from Belfast, the same as me. And he's a bird illustrator, the same as me. So I kind of got a feeling that we might be related somewhere along the line. So when I do get to Colombia, I intend to look him up and have a few cervezas with him and chat about Belfast.
So, Geoffrey, let me ask, you've had a lot of adventures, you shared a lot of stories, and I will call attention for those of you that might not have had the opportunity yet to read the book. I mean, it's just so many great stories, and I love the way that you divided them into chapters based on birds.
Mm-hmm.
You made a comment earlier about somebody assuming that you were gay because you watched birds.
Yeah.
On page 105 of his book, he responded to somebody who said, only gay people watch birds.
Yeah, that's the guy I was talking about. He's now a very good friend. I also taught him how to drive. And he's a Scotsman.
I did like the way that you said that you didn't appreciate his stealing the oxygen.
Yes.
I like that. I like how you can stand up to people.
We have a lot of good phrases over here.
Yeah. So what made you, all these stories that you share, what made you name the book More Birds Than Bullets?
Oh, yeah, great question. I was struggling with the title for that. One of my army buddies, who is a lieutenant colonel, he's now retired, Roger Dickey, he was given okay, so the British Army have conservation, has a conservation body. Many people don't know that, and I find it very frustrating that the MOD don't advertise the fact. So the RAF have an ornithological group, the Navy have an ornithological group, as do the Army, and it's called the AOS. And Roger was going around giving talks. He worked for the British Trust for Ornithology as well, doing stuff. And he was giving talks about the kind of things that soldiers get up to, which many people don't know about. A lot of soldiers do a lot of good work. They raise a lot of money for charities. I mean, a dear friend of mine who lives in Thailand, he, when we were in Bosnia, he was out there. He helped to get a Muslim hospital rebuilt. He got children, I think it was like 26 children, if I remember rightly, out of Sarajevo into hospitals around Europe and over here in the UK, and got them repatriated. And he raised money, got clothes, got toys, and people don't get to hear about these things. They only get to hear about the, I killed Johnny, the dirty rats type stories, which infuriates me no end, because there's so many good stuff. We even have a British officer who calls the Germans to rewrite their history books on where the last battle between the Romans and the Germanics was, and the Germans weren't happy about that either, I might add. But so Roger called his talk More Birds Than Bullets, and I asked him if I could steal it, and he kindly gave me permission to use it. And the emphasis is actually more birds than bullets. I mean, somebody actually said to me, oh, there's not enough war stories in it. Well, the clue's in the title, my friend.
More birds.
More birds. What do you want to hear about bullets for? There's plenty of books on the market if you want to know about bullets. So.
Yeah, I have.
Did I answer your question? I hope I did.
You did. Okay. And I love that that the person who used that as a title for his presentation was so willing to have you use it as the title of your book.
Thank you.
So, you know, I wrote in my notes something about a comment, and it had to do with owls. And I'm just, I have to admit, I have a little Zoom fatigue today. I have been on since 5:00 a.m. Alaska time for an 8-hour seminar, and then for an hour webinar, and then I took a 15-minute break, and then I was on for another, and now I'm on Zoom again. I think my computer is like, what the heck? But the owl, you said something that made me write in my notes. I'm going to one-up you, and maybe you can go back to what you said, what you wrote in your book. But here's my story. So, and I see I have another question, but so I was bird banding, ringing. I was ringing birds, saw-whet owls in a woods in southern Indiana, and I had to drive through the woods in the middle of the night to go to the location where everybody had set up the banding station. And as I'm driving in the dark by myself, I hear this beep, 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 beep. And my first thought was, what in the heck is a vehicle with backup beeps doing in the middle of the woods? And then as I got a little closer, I, was rolling down my windows, and I'm like, oh my gosh, am I out here with some backhoes? And as I got a little closer, I realized, there was the crew, there was the banding station. I'm like, oh my gosh, those were the saw-whet owl recordings that they were playing to bring the saw-whet owls in so we could ring them. But I can't remember what made me think of that story in the book. Does that ring a bell to you?
Well, yeah, one of the birds we used to ring or band. I don't know if anybody's ever seen the war film Dam Busters. It was a raid that the British did towards the end of the war, where they took out 3 of the main dams in Germany, which produced heavy water for their weapons and stuff like that. And one of them's called the Monazay, which features in the film. And just up on the hills at the back of the Monazay Dam is where we used to trap Tangerman's owl. You guys call it the Boral owl. So we would go out at midnight, and so for example, if I was ringing little owls, I'd go out between like 7 and midnight, and Tangerman's owl or Boral owl, I'd go from midnight till 3 o'clock in the morning. So we would be up in the hills at the back of the Monazay Dam, where this famous raid took place, trapping and ringing owls up there. Amazing birds. And one of the nest boxes actually had a tree creeper, you call them brown creepers, it built its nest behind the nest box, between the box and the bark of the tree, the trunk of the tree. So he had his own personal bodyguard as well, which I thought was cool. I'm not so sure the owl got anything from that relationship, but certainly the tree creeper did.
Well, thank you. I don't know why I thought of that. I was like, and you said something about, I think you said you were alone, or, and I was like, oh, thank goodness I'm alone in my car with nobody knowing that I was thinking
I was alone.
A vehicle.
Alone. I don't, yeah, I mean, it's only recently I started going birding in groups. I've always done things on my own pretty much.
So,
but I did have a situation with one of our colonels. He decided, okay, this colonel, he was into flare arranging, clock restoration and furniture restoration. And he decided it'd be a really cool idea to have soldiers who had interesting hobbies to do a hobbies display. And I got roped into doing one on birds. And interesting thing about this guy was on maneuvers, I was his driver, and he never spoke to anybody below the rank of sergeant unless he was giving you an order. So pretty much my relationship with him was getting orders because he never spoke to me otherwise. And there was a brigadier who was visiting, and he decided to have like loads of displays. There was people put golf on and football and various other things, because the guys got involved with football with the local communities as well. That's how a lot of them learned German. I learned mine through Birdie. And he actually said to me, he did an inspection the day before this brigadier came, and he said to me, oh, well, you know, I had to explain what it was I was doing. And he says, oh, you're not going to get many people joining your group, are you? And as he walked off, I was like, to my battery sergeant major, what group? He said, oh, I'll tell you later. I said, no, tell me now, sir, what group? And he said, well, the colonel wants you and the other guys to come in on a weekend with and encourage the single men to engage in your hobby. I said, are you serious? You want me to come in on a Saturday morning after they'd been downtown the night before getting drunk and saying, right, who's for a bit of bird watching then? I would get lynched. It's not happening. It's not happening. So, yeah, I couldn't believe he said that. But lo and behold, when the brigadier came the next day, the colonel said, oh, well, as long as you get one person, that's all that matters. Well, I got one person, the brigadier. The brigadier was a birder, and he had never seen a boral owl, and he wanted to see one. So we took him up. I arranged to take him up. I'm dropping a bit of the story from it at the moment, but we were up in the hills. It's really dark up there. You can't really see your hand in front of your face. And my German friends, I was forced to speak German with them because they told me they couldn't speak English. So I was doing the translating between them and the brigadier and back again. And the brigadier then asked a question. I was about to translate it, and one of my German friends called Wolf, which is a really cool name to have, I think, answered him in English. And I was like, Wolf, yes. You just spoke English. Yes. You told me you couldn't speak English. I know. So you've had me speak German all this time when you could speak English. He said, it worked. I don't bloody care if it worked. And the brigadier found it highly amusing as well. So yeah, so that was a really cool time. That was good fun. And it did work, you know, it forced me to speak German. So
It's great. I remember that story and thinking, what a creative way to get somebody to speak another language.
yeah, tell them you don't understand them.
So we're winding down now. We've got about another 5 or 6 minutes, but we have a question that somebody wanted to know a little bit more about woodpeckers. What's so appealing about woodpeckers? You shared that, you know, that when you were in boarding school, you kind of started a love of woodpeckers, but what about them is so appealing to you?
Well, obviously, initially, that first encounter with the green woodpecker was the big thing. But over the years, I've learned, one of the things I started to do when I got out of the army was discover a bit about who I am. So I kind of went on a bit of a spiritual journey, if you like, not a religious one, just a spiritual one. Remember, I grew up in Belfast in a country full of religious hatred and bigotry. So to me, a woodpecker is an extremely I can relate to it on a spiritual level, you know. So when they fly, they undulate, for example. Life is like that, up and down, up and down. And then they're heading for a tree. And in the last moment, they decide, no, I don't want to land in this tree. I'll land in the one next to it. And life is like that. You're going down a particular path. You think you're going to do this job or this, you're going to have this kind of life. And then suddenly you go off on a tangent, you know. And there's just so much about them, you know, their tail is really powerful. They're grounded in that respect. We call the green woodpecker the old man of the woods. So he's, you know, he's taking care of the woodlands. He's getting rid of the dead, well, not getting rid of the dead trees. He's bringing them down so they can rejuvenate and so on. So I just find, for me, it's a very powerful connection, not just seeing the bird physically, but spiritually. And I find that with many birds, actually, but woodpeckers in particular. The guys used to make fun of me about that as well. You know, they would go into the woods and they'd say, oh, Jeff, we need a middle spotted woodpecker. Can you become the middle spotted woodpecker? Like I'm some kind of Buddhist or something, you know? And I used to say, well, guys, you can do this as well. And it was like, oh, no, no, no. I said, well, you can do it. No, you do it. You do it so well. So you want a middle spot? And they go, yeah. What about that one on the tree above us? Bloody hell. So it's taken on a, I don't know, maybe a bit of a mystique for them, you know, an enigma, which I was,
Wow,
I've
That's awesome.
been called a few times, I have to say. That's the polite version.
So Geoffrey, I thought your book was amazing.
Thank you.
I learned a lot, and I definitely am keenly interested in the work that you do and the way that you've been able to take your passion and share it with other people. We don't have time to go into that tonight because we have to end in a few minutes. But I
Okay.
do want to make sure that you mention your new book
Thank you very much.
and your website, so that if we want to explore more, learn more, we
Okay.
have those tools for us. And speaking of tools, Daisy has put into the chat our Facebook, our Twitter, and our Instagram account information.
Okay, cool. Well, I've just put some links in the chat to some videos that I did about bird language and stuff like that. One of the things I discovered working in rehab, which is one of the most powerful jobs I ever had, was my boss allowed me to take the clients out into the woods and do nature connection with them. And so I developed lots of games. Some are games that quite a few people are familiar with, but then I would expand on them and go to deeper levels because I'm looking at it from a therapeutic level rather than just having fun, which of course you can use all the games for. So this is my third book called Exploring Bird Language. And it's like 22 games in there, you know, getting children or adults, you know. I notice when men go out, they want to be little boys again. They want to build shelters. They want to make fires, and women as well. But the men really do become boys again, you know, and it's great fun. So I've got lots of exercises, sit spots, what's in a name. What I do is I get the kids or the adults, in particular in the rehab, to take on the role of an animal. And it's really amazing when people say, oh, I don't know nothing about this animal, but they end up actually behaving like the animal that I've asked them to be. And it's a real eye-opener for a lot of people. So, you know, these games were developed for parents to take their kids out into the, particularly after, you know, we've been locked down with this COVID thing, and, you know, getting the kids out, getting the adults out and just playing games, you know, become a bird for the day or become a weasel for the day or whatever. So it's packed with like 22 games. The nice thing about it is on the back, there are 3 Americans. John Young, I don't know if anybody's heard of John Young, but he coined the term bird language. Really nice guy. So he wrote an endorsement for the book. Richard Louv, who wrote Last Child in the Woods, he's endorsed it. And Joseph Cornell, who's considered the grandfather of nature connection. Few words, but nonetheless an endorsement from the grandfather of nature connection, Joseph Cornell. All Americans, you know. So for me, that's 3 feathers in my cap, and I proudly wear them. So I would like to encourage people to get it and go out and play. I mean, if you do a job like mentoring or wilderness therapy, or you work with kids and on any level, social worker, it really matters not. Just getting people to engage on that level is really, really powerful stuff. Really powerful stuff.
Yeah.
So
Thank you so much, Geoffrey.
Thank you for letting me mention the book. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, and Joseph Cornell used to be the father, and now he's the grandfather. When I was young, I read his books.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is his game Meet a Tree, which is one of the main activities I use on my courses. I I was working one day on the book, and I was like, I'd love to know how far back this game goes, because I actually believed he came up with the game. And my girlfriend at the time was reading another book, and she said, check this out. And I referenced it I definitely referenced it in my first book, which is called Our Relationship with Nature. And it talked about a Native American called Little Bear, who describes as a boy how the elders would take them out and introduce them to a tree, and it would take days. I do it in an hour, because I've got time constraints on a workshop. But days, you imagine that, going out for days blindfolded with the elders, and right, sit by this tree and we'll come back in a couple of days and collect you, you know. So this thing, and that was going back to the 1940s stroke 1920s, you know. So it goes back much, much, much further. So it's a great philosophy, you know, to connect with nature on that level. So.
Great. Well, thank you very much again for getting up in the middle of the night to join us. We appreciate it. And thank you to all of you book club members who read the book, bought the book, and joined us tonight. Thank you for your questions. And we will hopefully see you February the 24th at our next book club. And then Geoffrey, we hope to have you back again sometime as well.
Yeah, well, I'm working on the follow-up to More Birds and Bullets. So.
All right. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you again so much, everybody. Have a great evening. And
thank you very much.
Go outside and play and go birding.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care. God bless.